This is section 2, the history of sociology, and we have two learning objectives for this section. First, explain why sociology emerged when it did, and describe how sociology became a separate academic discipline. Many of the topics that are central to modern sociological scholarship were studied by ancient philosophers. Many of these earlier thinkers were motivated by their desire to describe an ideal society. In the 18th century, Age of Enlightenment philosophers developed general principles that could be used to explain social life. Thinkers such as John Locke, Voltaire, Immanuel Kant, and Thomas Hobbes responded to what they saw as social ills by writing on topics that they hoped would lead to social reform. The early 19th century saw great changes with the Industrial Revolution, increased mobility, and new kinds of employment. It was also a time of great social and political upheaval with the rise of empires that exposed many people, for the first time, to societies and cultures other than their own. Millions of people were moving into cities, and many people were turning away from their traditional religious beliefs. Auguste Comte, who lived from 1798 to 1857, in the early 19th century, he reinvented the term sociology and is considered the father of sociology. Comte named the scientific study of social patterns positivism. He believed that using scientific methods to reveal the laws by which societies and individuals interact would usher in a new positivist age of history. Second important historical figure for sociology is Karl Marx, and hopefully you are somewhat familiar with his background. He lived from 1818 to 1883 and was a German philosopher and economist. You probably are most familiar with the book he wrote, The Communist Manifesto. Marx rejects Comte's ideas of positivism and instead believed that societies grow and change as a result of the struggles of different social classes over the means of production. Now, the next three people, I don't have pretty pictures of them, so you'll just have to listen. Third guy is Herbert Spencer. He lives 1820 to 1903. Spencer rejected much of Comte's philosophy, as well as Marx's theory of class struggle and his support of communism. Instead, Spencer favored a form of government that allowed market forces to control capitalism. Fourth guy is Emil Durkheim, who lived 1858 to 1917. And Durkheim helped establish sociology as a formal academic discipline by establishing the first European Department of Sociology at the University of Bordeaux in 1895. He believed that people rise to their proper level in society based on merit, and believed that through the study of social facts, it would be possible to determine if a society was healthy or pathological. He saw healthy societies as stable, while pathological societies experienced a breakdown in social norms between individuals and society. In 1897, Durkheim attempted to demonstrate the effectiveness of his rules of social research when he published a work titled Suicide. Durkheim examined suicide statistics in different police districts to research differences between Catholic and Protestant communities. He attributed the differences to socio-religious forces rather than to individual or psychological causes. And our last guy is Max Weber, who lived 1864 to 1920. Weber wrote on many topics related to sociology, including political change in Russia and social forces that affect factory workers. He's known best for his 1904 book, The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism, in which his theory is still considered controversial today. Weber believed that it was difficult, if not impossible, to use standard scientific methods to accurately predict the behavior of groups as people hoped to do. The influence of culture on human behavior had to be taken into account. He came up with the word Verstehen, which is a German word that means to understand in a deep way. In seeking Verstehen, outside observers of a social world, an entire culture, or a small setting, attempt to understand it from an insider's point of view. Weber describes sociology as striving to interpret the meaning of social action and thereby give a casual explanation of the way in which actions proceeds and the effects it produces. He came up with anti-positivism, which is social researchers which strive for subjectivity as they work to represent social processes, cultural norms, and societal values. So it's the opposite of positivism with Comte. This approach led to some research methods whose aim was not to generalize or predict, but to systematically gain an in-depth understanding of social worlds. We look at qualitative and quantitative sociology. The different approaches to research based on positivism or anti-positivism are often considered the foundation for the differences found today between quantitative sociology and qualitative sociology. Quantitative sociology uses statistical methods such as surveys with large numbers of participants. Researchers analyze data using statistical techniques to see if they can uncover patterns of human behavior. Qualitative sociology seeks to understand human behavior by learning about it through in-depth interviews, focus groups, and analysis of content sources like books, magazines, journals, and popular media. Oh, and finally, we can get away from Karl Marx and take a look at our Making Connections box, and this one is on social policy and debate. How do working moms impact society? Quantitative research shows that in 1940, only 27% of all women worked outside the home. Today, 59.2% of all women do. Almost half of women with children younger than 1 year of age are employed. Sociologists can study this in a variety of ways. They can look at child development, the economic value, or a shift in society. Research from these types of studies can lead to the creation of laws, help influence social acceptance of stay-at-home dads, or help governments determine how to best allocate funding for education. Section 2 Summary. Sociology was developed as a way to study and try to understand the changes to society brought on by the Industrial Revolution in the 18th and 19th centuries. Some of the earliest sociologists thought that societies and individuals' roles in society can be studied using the same scientific methodologies that are used in the natural sciences, while others believed that it was impossible to predict human behavior scientifically, and still others debated the value of such predictions. Those perspectives continue to be represented within sociology today. And we'll try a little test yourself. These are the multiple choice questions at the end of the chapter. Which of the following was a topic of study in early sociology? Astrology, economics, physics, or history? And the answer to that one is economics. Which founder of sociology believes societies change due to class struggle? Emile Comte, Karl Marx, Plato, or Herbert Spencer? And that is B, Karl Marx. The differences between positivism and anti-positivism relates to A, whether individuals like or dislike their society, B, whether research methods use statistical data or person-to-person research, C, whether sociological studies can predict or improve society, or D, all of the above. And that one is C, whether sociological studies can predict or improve society. Which would a quantitative sociologist use to gather data? A, a large survey, B, a literature search, C, an in-depth interview, or D, a review of television programs? The answer to this one is A, a large survey. And 9, Weber believed humans could not be studied purely objectively because they were influenced by A, drugs, B, their culture, C, their genetic makeup, or D, the researcher. And the answer to that one is B, their culture. And that is it for Section 2, the History of Sociology.